Hello, everyone. It's George Howard in the Cosmic Tusk podcast. Today, I'm joined by Michael Shermer, one of the most influential voices in modern skepticism and science communication. Michael's the founding publisher of Skeptic Magazine, a longtime columnist for Scientific American, and author of numerous best-selling books exploring belief, doubt, science, and human reasoning. He also has a brand new book titled The Truth, What Is It, How to Find It, and Why It Still Matters, an epistemological tome for sure, and I have just ordered it. A timely and ambitious work that takes on one of the most pressing questions of our era. In a world of information overload, polarized narratives, and declining trust in institutions, Michael asks how we can still meaningfully pursue truth and why doing so matters more than ever. What makes Michael compelling for our audience is not simply that he critiques extraordinary claims, of which we have many on the Cosmic Tusk podcast, but that he has done so for decades, thinking deeply about how and why people change their mind, including his own. His work consistently explores the tension between skepticism and openness, between guarding against error and remaining receptive to new evidence. That tension is at the heart of today's conversation. Michael, welcome to the Cosmic Tusk podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate that. What does tusk mean in this sense?
Oh, it's a great question. There may be some of the listeners may be wondering as well. But I have an 11-foot long, 169-pound mammoth tusk.
Wow. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, at the home that I just moved from. I hadn't moved it yet. And I got it in 2007 as part of the Comet Research Group. And I don't know if you use that term, but that's the folks who publish on the Younger Dryas Impact event.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
How much does a mammoth tusk cost these days on the open market? That'd be fun to have.
That is an issue.
Is that illegal?
No. They seem to have risen somewhat dramatically in value just because people started realizing that they were obtainable. Right. So there wasn't a crimp in supply. I think there was more demand. And I don't know, a big long one like mine, I'm actually in some proceedings with my wife. And I probably am not supposed to value a damn thing right now. We're trying that one.
Well, you could just cut it in half and no, you could do the Solomon thing where you say, I shall cut it in half. And then the judge will say, whoever wants to cut it in half is not the true owner or something like that.
Michael, no, that's great. And out of all the little things that you think about in this, I've never thought, well, why don't we just cut it in half? That'll solve it. But,
Yes.
But it is truly mammoth but it's cosmic because Dr. Richard Firestone and Alan West believe it was pelted with some type of extraterrestrial material. And the evidence for such is that we actually have bored into it. I've got some neat pictures on my blog under the tusk. We bored into it and extracted these little metallic bits that seem to have bored their way into it and splotch it and otherwise indent it. And those were tested and it ended up being 12% nickel iron. The only place you find nickel in that kind of abundance in iron is from space. And there are tremendous piles of these remains in Alaska. And particularly as Joe Rogan has popularized with John Reeves. And this actually came from his Boneyard, Alaska, but it was long before he became famous. But long story short, this has already gotten long. But in 2007, they were filming National Geographic Explorer on the new claims about the Younger Dryas event. And this was during what I call our honeymoon period. So they were doing a straight up mainstream explorer on it. And they went to Canada Fossils in Calgary to recreate finding other tusks that they had in their possession, generally pieces and parts that had this same material on them. So they were going to recreate it. And Alan West, one of the leading lights of the group, the night before filming said, well, while I'm in the tusk warehouse, let me go see if I can find some more pieces and parts that exhibit this stuff. And found this beautiful tusk. You take a neodymium magnet and, the simple way to identify that at least it's iron, and you hang it from a thread and it clicks to the tusk, if there's some kind of iron there. And he did so on camera with this tusk. And then Canada Fossils said to the research group, y'all brought us such great attention. We'd like to sell you this tusk at a fantastic price. And they emailed around to the publishing group, of which I'm the, honorary member. And nobody took him up on it. And I said, I'll take that thing. We had just redecorated our house, had a big empty spot above the TV. And I got that tusk. And it was actually in Nature. It was profiled in Nature. And I really need to get the Nature article and frame it and like put it beside it. But it was called Bullets, Pelt Mammoth Tusk.
So does this tusk have holes in it, like little BB holes where the impacts went through it?
Yes, it's got more indentions. It's more like a little splotch that you can feel when your finger runs across. You can also see them. And some of them, particularly in the other ones that they found, definitely had BBs all the way into it. And it also extended somewhat in it. So some kind of hot metal splayed these things. Some of it at speeds. It doesn't. Well, I'll tell you this, Michael. It's a great example of kind of my own approach to skepticism. I've always been a little skeptical about my own damn tusk. That it just didn't seem to me that in any kind of cosmic event, just kind of intuitive physics, that you're going to get something hauling ass so quickly from an iron meteorite that it would splatter over thousands of square miles, presumably, a number of beasts out there, and actually just what you're saying, enter it. Now, splotching it makes more sense to me. I mean, does
I
it
don't
molten?
know. You see those tests, like when they were checking the space shuttle tiles for impacts, that even a tiny little, just like less than a millimeter in size at high speed causes catastrophic damage. I mean, not just a little tiny hole, but it would just shatter it. So it's hard to believe. I agree that how a tusk could be impacted by a little metal BB and just have a
Little
tiny
BBs
hole.
don't come in from space. What comes in from space either vaporizes or becomes a crater, right? And by vaporizes, yeah, you would have some metallic components in there, and it may reconstitute itself with it, but it's just not. It's not even coming in like BBs, But just to clarify, the tusk was never claimed, and this is an example of intellectual integrity and honesty, that they first suspected they were investigating the 12,800 year event that we believed happened when they found these other pieces and parts. They had like a bison bone, all of them from Alaska, a couple of tusk pieces and whatnot, and then this one. And they suspected it was related to the extinction event, et cetera, at 12.8. But when they got them all tested, they were 37,000 to 35,000 years old. So it didn't match their own suspected catastrophe. But then subsequently, they went back and did another paper. It was a great paper, didn't get a lot of attention, where they went and tested the pieces at the New York Museum of Natural History that has a huge collection of this material that's been well covered on Rogan with John Reeves. And this was before Reeves, though, and essentially went and scooped stuff out of the interior, the actual sedimentary remnants.
You talking about tusks? Scrape
Yes,
stuff
sir.
out of tusks?
Out of, I would call them fossils, but they're not fossils, but out of the bones, out of the remnant bones, and found it absolutely chock-a-block full with impact proxies at another date. So they've written 2 papers that don't concern the Younger Dryas event, and this was one of them. They're saying something happened in Alaska, probably over 2 or 3 episodes, which doesn't make particular sense. Why does something hit Alaska 3 times? Was there a global catastrophe, et cetera? But evidence is the evidence, and there was 1,000 times more spherules than they find at the Younger Dryas event. I mean, they didn't have
35,000. That was 35,000 years ago.
That's right. And there's been speculation that something happened there. Various, again, rank speculation over the years, pulled, from, what I'm trying to say, not poor evidence, but circumstantial evidence that something perhaps happened back then. And this was actually some data to support it. But
I wonder if anybody's done that at Tunguska, which was an airburst, and that maybe debris, rained down on animal bones that might be. I guess it's pretty hard to get to it to find that kind of evidence.
Well, no, it has been done. And it actually is used when the Younger Dryas, when the Comet Research Group has a suite of evidence that includes, nanodiamonds, elevated geochemistry, particularly platinum, et cetera, and so forth. And one of the main ones, shocked quartz now, but one of the early ones was metallic microspherules, right? Little tiny droplets of reconstituted frozen rain of hell. And that they're a mixture of both the there's a class objects that air burst. That's well accepted mainstream stuff. Doesn't make it all the way to the ground, but it ain't no shooting star, right?
Mm-hmm.
It comes in and turns into a hellish plasma plume of 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit and kicks. It's basically like a nuclear bomb without the radiation. And just as they find trinitite at the bomb places, they also find a number of, metallic indicators that things whipped up. And sure, they find spherules. They found the trinitite there. But to your point, they went to Tunguska and they tested for spherules and found the spherules. And that was accepted as mainstream evidence. So that's in the public literature. We also tested for spherules, and the KT boundary had spherules, right? That there's a whole world of spherules that
Mm-hmm.
you can tag off of. Again, our thing is controversial, but each piece of the evidence is not controversial.
You probably
that
know
makes
Avi Loeb's research about Oumuamua and the interstellar object number 2, and then now 3I Atlas.
Yeah.
So 2 summers ago, Avi went to the South Pacific near Papua New Guinea and scraped the bottom of the ocean floor with a magnetic bed to pull up these spherules that would be left over from this airburst or whatever it was, impact, I guess, of the meteor. But was it just a meteor, or was it an interstellar technology? This is kind of obvious thing, you probably know. And so he found some interesting ratios that it was not is one of these what I call ambiguous information zone. He said it looks like it's artificial, could be technological, a blend of that ratio of metals, and other scientists said, nah, doesn't look like that at all. Or it could be industrial, just industrial waste from earthbound technology and so on. Anyway, that never got resolved.
I followed it really closely because it matched a lot of the stuff that we had been doing. And it also seemed to me I'd rather look for needles in a haystack, right? I mean, it is hard enough to go to well-known archaeological sites and pull samples. No, not particularly hard, but to pull samples from the archaeological face at 12.8 and below the black mat. We may discuss that. And then test them. And actually the testing, you have to size sort the spherules. This is very controversial and led to a lot of skepticism about our thing because someone did it improperly trying to do a test of us. But it's the extraction process and the processing of the sample to end up with just the spherules is very laborious. And it's needle in a haystack stuff. If you're doing it off the ocean floor, and something came in, it was large, but it wasn't so large to leave a gigantic strewn field where you can expect. I just don't know how they expected to pinpoint a place that would be close enough. Then go down.
Well, he said that NASA tracked its incoming trajectory into the ocean, and that he thinks he was pretty close to where NASA said it hit the ocean. By then it would have, disintegrated and just been these tiny little spherules. The problem is he didn't do an A/B test run. Like, let's go somewhere where we know it didn't hit and then see what the magnetic bed pulls up and then compare the two. He hasn't done that yet. He says he's going to do that for his next expedition, which I told him.
I should probably point out, just for people's understanding, it also doesn't match Lowe's work, even though his may be totally legit, that our spherules are not cosmic material. They didn't come in cosmically. It's the kick up of what hit the ground. So that's going to have some cosmic material.
I see.
Right. It's basically tektites.
I see.
Right.
Okay.
And actually, here are our pieces. I've never shown them went down to the only now identified and published site of one of these plumes in Perkins, Louisiana, and brought back some pieces.
Nice.
And these are all tektites and have very, very exotic chemistry.
So remind me, you're into the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis. Are you a geologist? Are you an amateur just investigator, or what's your thing?
No. My lane, and that's why I do things like this. I'm a pajama scientist. And people, anybody listen to this podcast. Yeah. I mean, I am a totally uncredentialed, barely made it out of the University of North Carolina. Very proud to have that back there. It cost me 5.5 years. And no, I have no credentials whatsoever, but I've been a science geek my entire life. And as we discussed a little bit before the show, a skeptic much of that time. But I was always interested and thought the most fruitful areas of science were, call them fringe or controversial or heretical or whatnot. I was just always fascinated by that.
That's what I do.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
And the hypothesis, just to remind me, because it's been a while, is that the megafaunal extinction, which is often thought of as the hypothesis of overhunting with the migration of humans into North America, maybe in conjunction with some climate threats to the megafaunal organisms that weakened them, and then the overhunting wiped them out. You're saying it's not that, it's an impact which changed the climate dramatically, and that's what wiped them out, and it wasn't hunting, or maybe both?
Yeah, that's a component of it, very significant component, but it wasn't studying megafaunal extinctions and then we, said, okay, it was a fragmenting comet, right? It was more, a lot of things happened. You could say, were we studying the Clovis people? They also blinked out. America's first kind of widely acknowledged culture. Controversial what came before and when, but everybody agrees there was a lot of damn arrowhead spear points left behind by the Clovis people. They blink out at that same time. In other words, think of it this way. There's a black mat that's analogous to the KT boundary found at 90% of paleoarchaeological sites in North America, a visible line. And it used to be a rule of thumb that you're not going to find the good stuff until you go through the black mat. That was well known to generally Western archaeologists because it's more apparent there. Talk about that later, but they would dig down and they knew they weren't going to find Clovis or bones until you got through that black mat. And the black mat, people very justifiably think must have been the fires and all of that. No, it's actually the wasteland of algae that existed for 1,200 years, that it went from a, warm, dry climate to a wet, cold one. Right. And it also, there's three things you can say. It wiped out the first American culture, wiped out, 100 different species of megafauna, or contributed, and it caused a climate crash, very well accepted climate crash. So all of those things, happened. We're not claiming those things. It's just saying, okay, we've got a cause. Now, the interesting thing is all of those have been mysteries, these mysteries. Well, no one had suggested actually it came from space.
And then why did this not all happen at 35,000 years ago, where you have all this evidence of the same thing happening?
We don't know. You don't know. Why did it not happen? There are all sorts of wild climate swings. The mainstream, and I hate that term, but it's useful. The mainstream has to answer the other question. There have been wild climate swings that are analogous to Younger Dryas. Now, it was somewhat special, but that didn't cause the last major extinction was, the three, you call it 3 and 35 million years ago. And then 65. But one of the largest extinctions in the last 65 million years occurred within human experience. I find it so much more interesting what the hell happened to mammoths than what the hell happened to dinosaurs. I mean, dinosaurs are interesting, but if you're talking 65 million years ago, it might as well be on another fucking planet. I mean, it's just, but if you're talking 13,000 years ago, hell, that's just 4 times the timeline of the pyramids back. There's no question Homo sapiens would witness those. In fact, they're blamed for the extinction. But a lot of people do get into this subject via the extinction because they get interested in that, particularly hunter types. And people are very familiar with wildlife and they go, no.
So we now know that there human habitats in South America older than your boundary time there. Why did it not wipe them out?
Oh, it had significant. It is older, but they certainly don't flourish after the Younger or during the Younger Dryas. Yeah, the Clovis points are found in South America.
No, not Clovis. I mean, other sites. Aren't there like 19,000-year-old sites? There's a site in New Mexico now that's 25,000 years old of people that lived then, and so on. So
absolutely, but see, we're not saying it created people. We're saying it took them away. Right.
Yeah,
so
but there's continuous habitation in some of these South American sites, as I recall, throughout this whole time. How come the South American cultures were not wiped out?
I'd have to look at the evidence for continuous habitation at that time.
Well,
and also,
as far as I know, that's what archaeologists say.
I haven't claimed that all cultures said it affected the Clovis culture, which was definitely one. Now, if there was a contemporaneous culture with Clovis 13,000 years ago, I'm not aware of that. So you're saying there's continuous habitation by Clovis people, or are you saying there's another?
No, the South American ones.
Civilization is not the term. Another.
Yeah, cultures. Yeah, cultures.
Yeah, another culture. Excuse me.
Yeah,
right. because
As
that,
far as maybe I'm wrong, but that's
yeah.
as I understand it. There were these older South American cultures that continuously existed throughout all this time. They were not. They did not go
Mhm.
extinct after this impact.
Mhm. Clovis people did. And then when they came back, they changed their points, right, to redstone out west and what, no, redstone in the east too. Like they gave up the former technology, as you call it. Sounds funny in our context, but they no longer made the Clovis
So
points.
I suspect there were multiple migrations into North America. So is it your contention that there were some that came before the impact, and then the impact happened, and then North America was populated by new migrants,
No, 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 no.
immigrants coming from
Well, we don't
from
know. I mean, we're just
Asia
scratching
or
the
what?
surface on all of this. We've got better evidence of an impact, much better evidence than what the hell happened. At Abu Huraira in
I
Syria,
see.
we have
I
a
see.
pretty good timeline of it because we found this evidence worldwide, right? But no, I believe personally that the survivors reconstituted themselves, and when they started to repopulate, because we showed dramatic spear point reductions, the occurrence of spear points, Clovis spear points, not only ceases, but when it comes back in Redstone, there's not as many. Right. I mean, you had a population reduction, and we did all that in North Carolina, South Carolina. Those are mainstream archaeologists who did it, who now have become a part of the Comet Research Group. For instance, Dr. Goodyear at the University of South Carolina. He's the father of modern archaeology in South Carolina. He found evidence for this, as did Dr.
Mhm.
Moore with his site at Abu Huraira in Syria, where he discovered the very first
Mhm.
agriculture, widely acknowledged to have discovered the first evidence for agriculture. And then we went back and looked at his site. He gave us sediment from it. And, there's bone material with melted trinitite glass on it. Right. I mean, they had a bad
Mhm.
day in Abu Huraira 12,800 years ago. But what I think is interesting, Michael, and I know you might not be brushed up on the Younger Dryas Impact, but being in your business, you just got to catch every ball that's thrown at you, and I kind of feel sorry for you sometimes because there's so much bullshit out there. Everybody wants to pin Michael Shermer down on and say, "Hey, Michael Shermer, tell me this isn't bullshit," and then you're supposed to be, and they're all caught up on it, and you get slapped with it, and it's happening again. Okay, but I was very impressed in 2020 when you tweeted that you would re-examine your priors, is the way you put it,
Mm.
which is a very elegant way of saying it.
Well, it's just a Bayesian language. Yeah.
Yeah, with regard,
Bayesian reasoning when you should change your mind when the
amen, man.
evidence changes.
Right, right. And it was re-examine your priors with regard to Graham Hancock's work
Mhm.
and with regard to the catastrophe part of it, which is
Mhm.
what we've just been speaking of. And if you think of Fingerprints of the Gods, it had a kind of a two-part premise. Both of them heretical at the time in the 90s, that there was a tremendous catastrophe and that there was a precursor civilization. And the way I look at it, and frankly, the reason I founded this event called the Cosmic Summit is, hell, we've proven the catastrophe part. What's proven, we can have a great epistemological talk. You just wrote a book on how you how you come to truth. But I think 65 peer-reviewed publications that, every one of them is thick as a damn book. And then our critics pop up with these, thin responses that if anybody reads the two papers, I mean, as now James Powell, who's a historian of science as well, wrote a book on it. He went and read both sets of papers and said, "This is the worst scientific crime I've ever seen," and felt compelled to write a book about it. He's been head of two universities, et cetera. Very distinguished gentleman in his 80s, and went and wrote a book about it because he had to re-examine his priors. He said, "I've been a geologist for 65 years, and I missed the biggest thing
Mm.
that ever happened."
Mm.
And it's a
Mhm.
blind spot of ours. Yeah.
So, George, you invited me to be on your show to talk about, well, not this particular thing, I
Yeah.
guess, because I'm not a geologist, but how to think about the truth of historical past events when there's anomalies that are not explained in the mainstream theory. What do you do with the anomalies, and how can the anomalies build up into a new theory that
Mhm.
displaces the old paradigm? Something like that.
Yeah, and really more the point, what happens when you're in the position that I believe this science is, in a general sense, that you've always rightfully, I think so, then everybody's got their problems with peer review, and I do agree with the fact that it's broken, but I know that that you believe is kind of like America. It's the best system we got, given all the others, or
Yes.
none, right?
Or none.
So I understand that.
Mhm.
We played and you'll call on people that have extraordinary claims to just get it published. Just go put out your first paper. And I
Mhm.
mean, I've heard you say that for 2 decades. I get it.
Mhm.
But at the same time, starting, and I've been doing this since the '90s on this same subject. I mean, I was one of the
Mm.
first 3 people to be aware there might be an ice age comet other than Plato and Whiston and Newton. I mean, and Velikovsky and on and on and on.
Mhm.
Long history of people saying something happened 12,800 years ago, including Plato specifically, pinning it at that time. But then as far as a modern iteration,
You mean his
yeah.
Atlantis story?
Well, the catastrophe part of it, just as Graham tells it. Let's put aside the
Uh-huh.
precursor civilization, but he says 9,800 years before
Mm.
my
Mm.
grandfather's own time.
Mhm.
You do the math. He lived 300, 250 BC.
Mhm.
That's 13,000 years ago.
Mhm.
And that alone says to me, listen, there's no way that we're finding, unless somebody's defrauding, well, all of us are colluding to defraud, and it's a conspiracy of non-mainstream fraud to go salt samples and do all this stuff on these archaeological sites in order to prove Plato. I mean, I know for a fact that these guys came out of it more like forensic investigators who are interested in, for instance, cosmic geochemistry, like Ted Bunch was.
Mm.
He's NASA's exobiologist, passed away a
Mm.
couple years ago, foundational member of the Comet Research Group. He was interested in the cosmic geochemistry of the archaeological faces. And then he sees an explosion of platinum at 12,800. And he's not talking Plato. He could care less about Plato or Velikovsky and all that. He's saying something happened. And there are dozens of those people on our team. Yeah.
Now, are you on board with Graham's theory of the advanced ancient civilization that predated the ancient civilizations of Egypt
Yeah.
and Babylonia and so on, and that these date back to like 30 or 40,000 years ago?
I'll hedge a little bit or try to preserve my dignity with people that think like you do. I didn't 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And I were already well published on this, on the Younger Dryas Impact. I was on the original paper, been on a dozen more, got a couple thousand citations now as somebody without any credentials. So I watched all this develop. And then on the other side, I was watching the speculative stuff, the Graham Hancock stuff, because I read
Mhm.
Graham because I was it. And and I I had to treat it more seriously after I had evidence for the catastrophe. And I have come to believe, I do not think it is proven. I think it may, I don't like to say impossible, but it is not going to be like, can you prove there was a hellish worldwide swarm of comet fragments 12,800 years ago? You can prove that in or out. Was there, some, shouldn't say master race for God's sakes, but some culture of great mastery that was traveling the oceans and spreading their,
Mhm.
knowledge to people before and after? I don't know. There seems to be a lot of circumstantial evidence. I mean, just the shared
Like what?
iconography, you look at these handbags, for instance, although there's a
Oh, I see.
lot more than that.
Like
There's a
a
lot more.
Gobekli Tepe. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And
Well,
Göbekli Tepe, those things came along. Good. Thank you. And they came along, and I just said, I think Graham's probably right about this too, but not as right as he was about the catastrophe. Go ahead, sir.
well, I mean, it could be the catastrophe is real, and that did influence or impact uh, some of the civilizations around the globe existing at the time. But that doesn't say anything about like an advanced civilization 30, 40,000 years ago. I mean, we have quite a few archaeological sites from those dates. They're pretty basic hunter-gatherer type sites. And there's nothing to indicate that they're advanced. So I guess that my question would be, what do you mean by advanced? I mean, there's no
Mhm,
metal, there's no
mhm.
writing, there's no pottery. What do you mean by advanced?
Yeah, I think, well, I didn't talk about their, oh, Lord. Are you familiar? This is interesting. I think see, it was an example of how I'm on board. Have you followed this whole discussion about the vases?
No,
Huh.
no, I don't know that one. What
Yeah.
is that you're holding there? Where
It's
is it?
actually a 3D printed replica
Okay.
of what you call pre-dynastic Egyptian vases that
Okay.
are found in pre-dynastic before the pharaohs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before any hieroglyphs or pyramids or any of that stuff. You go
Mm-hmm.
to what we call in our community the butt flat people, where you don't give them credit for anything. They're just running around in butt flats with bone tools and mud houses or whatnot.
Okay, I haven't heard
And
that expression.
the butt flat people,
These are dated what
well, they
roughly?
find them in their graves. It's hard to date stone, so you don't know exactly. It's not hard; it's impossible. But
Oh, they're not
the,
clay; they're stone.
they're granite, often
Oh, they're
diorite.
granite. Okay.
They're just as hard as
All
it
right.
damn gets, man.
Okay. All right.
And they're millimeters thick. In fact, a number of them you can take a pen light and drop it into it and see directly through it. And then they have had them scanned, with point cloud scanners that are very highly accurate. You couldn't have done any of this stuff 30, 40 years ago. But they're often, perfect to within a thousandth of an inch and even greater. The
Mhm.
precision tolerances on this thing are absolutely space age.
But these are in
The
Egyptian graves that are what, 4 or 5,000 years old?
6, 7, 8,000 years old,
Uh-huh.
right?
Okay.
So these people
Well,
lived in mud huts, had bone tools, but somehow diverted their attention
I don't know.
sufficiently.
I wouldn't underestimate the power of. I mean, they have the same brains we have.
Mhm.
Our brains haven't changed. I call this the bigotry of low expectations. How could they possibly have built the pyramids or whatever? Maybe they're just smarter than we think they were. Maybe they were able to figure these things out, and we're not giving them credit for that.
Could be, but they were very selective about what they figured out. Why would you not chop some stone blocks to make you a house that wouldn't melt in the rain or whatever, that you had to stick thatch back on? And I mean, they lived in mud huts. Why in the world would you divert enough energy to make something now?
Yeah,
And it's very questionable.
but that's
Yeah.
probably from not from hunter gatherers. These are from civilizations, right? The 4,
Well, then
5,
then
6,
you're
7
justifying
thousand
Graham
years
there.
ago.
Yeah, no, this is pre-dynastic. So there
Yeah,
were
but that's
no.
okay. That's okay. Let's say we had some kind of
Yeah.
advanced civilization by Göbekli Tepe, which is what 13,000 year, 12,000 something
Mhm.
dated, and that's a pretty impressive site. I mean, these
Yeah.
aren't dummies, carving those things out. They're humans. They have the same brains we have. We're able to do this. Maybe they're just smarter than we gave them credit for.
I'd go with that. Absolutely. But what is the smarter than we give them credit for? So can they? What would Graham be saying contrary to that? He does believe they're smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah, but
He's just
yeah, I guess he
yeah.
would say it's a different group entirely. It's not the Egyptians or pre-Egyptians or whatever. It's this other Atlanteans, from 30, 40,000 years
Yeah,
ago
which is what I
that
believe.
that
Somebody else
had
gave them these.
yeah.
Somebody else gave them these,
Okay,
and we
but
don't know.
okay, so
Yeah.
all right.
Go-
Why are there none of those you're holding there from
yeah.
30,000 dating 30,000 years ago? Okay, it's rock. You can't date it. But you could date the stuff that's in it, like it's in a grave somewhere or something like that with some other wood or stuff you could
Right,
date
right, and that's what
organically.
was done. Right, it was found in graves. That's where they find them, and the Nakata people, as you
Y-
call them.
Okay, Dakota
And they
people.
lived along the Nile and the whole 9 yards, but they don't date back to 30,000 years.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Right.
So this is always my question for Graham. Where's
Yeah.
the evidence of this advanced people? I mean, where's their metal?
Mhm,
Where's their tools, metal tools? I mean, they could have
mhm.
had stone tools because stone tools date back, hundreds of thousands, millions, even millions of years ago. So we don't mean stone tools. We don't mean by advanced defined by stone tools, but something else. What do you mean?
Well,
So
this is a stone tool. It's not actually its use, its utility isn't apparent to anybody, right?
well,
But
apparently they
that
hold.
is a tool.
What do you got in there? Pennies or?
What do I have in there? No, these little nicotine things,
Oh, nicotine things. Oh, okay,
a
George.
little nicotine things, right? It's got a little disposal for a little
Well, so in
nasty
other
nic.
words, a lot of what I think Graham does is what we often call the God of the gaps, and when we're talking about
Yeah.
creationists. Here's a mystery that you scientists can't explain. So my alternative theory, I'm going to say, explains it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. But no theory explains all anomalies. So, this is the problem of
Right, right,
anomalies,
right.
and so I guess I mean, a lot of it, archaeologists do have some explanations for some of these apparent anomalies, but not all of them. Okay, so I
Right.
mean, I credit Graham for pushing the dates back further along the lines of, and it did take scientists a while to catch up on that. I think I would agree to that, but mainly because science is fairly conservative by nature, because most new ideas turn out not to be right. So you got some new finding, oh, look, we found this, this thing here, and then you run with it. Turns out it was misdated, right? So it's, instead of just running with it, from one study, one finding, this is true in all of social science. Every time there's some cutesy study that gets published and becomes popular, everybody says, oh, this is the whole new thing, and then no one can replicate it. So it has to be replicated, multiple times. Convergence of evidence from multiple sources, multiple labs dated it. They all got within, an error bar range of 5% or something of the same date, so that increases our confidence level in it being true, and so on. So for Graham, again, I just said, well, what do you mean by advanced? Because, do they have electricity? Do they have lights? I asked this,
I struggle with their same questions. That's why I think
pyramid was a power station. I forget his name. He sent me his book, and I'm sorry, I can't remember it now.
Chris Dunn.
Chris Dunn, yeah. Okay, so I asked him the same question. It's like, okay, if the Great Pyramid is a power station, what are they powering? Are they powering lights? Where are the lights? Where are the light bulbs? Are they powering engines somewhere? Where are the engines? Where's the copper wiring? Oh, it didn't need copper wiring. It was through the air like Tesla. All right, but when it's through the air at Tesla, it gets to somebody's hut or somebody's home. What's it powering there? A blender, a refrigerator?
I think the best answer to that.
The answer is I don't know.
Well, that's great. And listen, I'm happy to bat it around, but I'm less interested in defending Graham Hancock's published works than my own.
Oh,
right.
okay.
And we've got 65 papers in major journals saying there's a catastrophe. And I'm interested in this, to your point, not just to play gotcha or anything like that. But you are a science historian, an epistemologist, without peer. You just wrote a book on how the truth is determined.
Here it is.
In cases like ours, there it is. Absolutely. And I'm sorry I don't have one on hand.
It's all right.
But we're going to put a link to it, Michael. But hold on, let me frame the question.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're in a position like us where we have gone out and published in major journals, peer-reviewed, multidisciplinary, data-rich, forensic papers, and it's still called pseudoscience? Okay, when does it cross over? Does the system still account for big crossover paradigm-shifting discoveries?
I think it does. Or else we wouldn't have any new findings in science, and we get new findings all the time. Just look at the findings about the expanding universe in the 1990s. That is not just expanding; it's accelerating in its expansion, which was completely contradictory to the theory that the universe will eventually slow down and collapse because of the amount of mass. And these guys showed, but based on these type 2 black holes, that the universe is not just expanding, but accelerating. It's not slowing down, the opposite. And those guys won the Nobel Prize for that. So somehow challenging the mainstream can be done. And it's done.
Well, where is ours? Because it's a hell of a lot more relevant.
I don't know.
No, it's a legit question, because we're in a special category. And it doesn't have a peer right now.
Why?
This is the most important thing that ever happened. That's why we're the textile ape with the black mirror, man. We settled down immediately after the Younger Dryas settled us down. We went from plucking pears to pulling plows. So this one has very profound consequences for our understanding of humanity, where the expanding universe, if you're a cosmologist, I guess, is of interest.
Well, there's tons of examples like this. The ulcers are caused by stress. We believe this for almost a century. And then, in the 1980s, I guess, late 80s, early 90s, like, no, it's not stress at all. It's this virus. Oh, okay. Well, now it took this guy a few years to get the mainstream to come around.
He went through hell.
But he won, right? Yeah. So that turned out to be, he turned out to be right. Anyway, that's my point. Okay, so here's what I do. I'm not a geologist. As I mentioned, confronted with a subject like this, I go to some other expert. So just by chance this morning, I got an email from a gentleman who I think Mark Bosla.
Bosla. Now it's getting interesting.
Bosla, professor of, research associate professor, Earth and Planetary Sciences, University of New Mexico. So he just volunteered this. He goes, he said, I learned about this interview, what we're doing right now, because George announced on X last night a quote tweet of something you posted after their 2020 how do you say that? Abu
Abu Herrera. Mhm.
Abu Herrera paper. As it turns out, so he sent me 3 questions to ask you. So I'll just go through
Mhm.
1, 2, and 3. You can respond to each of them as we go along,
Mhm.
just as an interesting exercise in how to think about these things. As it turns out, I've spent the last week or so reviewing that paper. This is Moore et al. 2020 about the Abu Herrera
Mhm.
paper. Can you explain? Just remind me what Abu Herrera. This is a site.
It's the well-accepted location of first identified agriculture in Syria, and it was a
Syria.
crisis archaeology site. They went over in 73 and 74, swept up, and did crisis archaeology legit, led by Andrew M.T. Moore, and he's past president of the American Archaeological Association, largest archaeological professional
Yeah.
association in the world, and he joined our paper. He published that paper. He's the lead author.
And
So
the
go
site
ahead
was
and finish, but just to
but
put it in
yeah,
context that
this is for myself. And the
yeah.
site was dated to what age?
12,800 roughly years
12,800.
ago.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
right.
And they started impounding, domesticating animals and growing crops
Hmm.
immediately after what
Interesting.
now has been identified as the catastrophe layer. But go ahead
Hmm.
and, give
Okay,
me Bob's
so this is back
snapshot.
to Mark's question. As it turns out, I've spent the last
Mhm.
week or so reviewing that paper, and have found many serious, in my opinion, fatal problems with it.
Mhm.
The Comet Research Group published 3 papers about 3 settlements they claim were wiped out by airbursts: Abu Huraira in Syria, that you just mentioned,
Mhm.
Tal el Hammam in Jordan,
Hammam. Mhm.
Hammam, that was a 2021 paper, and Hopewell in Ohio, that was a 2022 paper. The Tel Al Haman and Hopewell papers have both been retracted. I think the Abu Hara should also be retracted. So, I mean, were
Yeah,
these
but
retracted?
it was
That
cherry picking
why
papers. The
why were
Hopewell
they?
paper was not the
Why were
Comet
they?
Research. Well, go
Okay,
ahead.
but why
Go
were
ahead.
they retracted? I don't know anything about that.
Oh, because maniacs like Boslow pester editors and so relentlessly for so many years that eventually they get the right one that says, "Shit, we'll go slap retracted on the top."
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell
Well,
you, the 2007 paper had been retracted. Neither have the ones in 2010, 2014, 2017. We've got 65 papers. Some really
okay.
pissed them off. Tell all mom, it mentioned Genesis in the
Oh,
abstract because it provided support for the fact that there was a literal Sodom. Right? And boy, if you don't think that pissed off the woke crowd,
what do
then
you mean a
you don't.
literal Sodom? You mean like the biblical
Mhm.
Sodom,
Yeah.
as in
Mhm.
Gomorrah?
Yeah. It it
Okay.
it was enough of it's the most read publication on the, Nature platform. It's at 850,000 downloads or something now.
Wow. Whoa.
It is the
Wow.
most popular thing published, and then they retracted it.
Wow.
See, it's an
That's
example of
That's
for
surprising.
the
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
for the
surprising.
absolute most mundane of reasons.
What was
And had
the,
I knew yeah.
what was the connection to Sodom in the biblical story? How did they get that from that
Well,
site?
I had to make a long story real short, but what do you
Okay.
mean whether there's a connection? It was already, archaeologists, which this pissed them off to no end, and I went over there. I went to Tel El Imam twice. I was the first person over there, collected samples, sent them back. The next time I went with 3 PhDs. They came 2 other subsequent times. We shipped more than, good God, so much material back from Jordan. Wouldn't believe it. It all went to Santa Barbara, right, and to
Santa
UCSB.
Barbara. Oh, because we
Yeah.
have an archaeological,
No, the Jim
department.
Kennett's lab. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Right, and Dr. Kennett is one of our leading lights and member of the American Academy, right? Academy of Science, and, yeah, he's a legit guy, and he started looking at this in 2005 and said, "Oh my god, I'm in a." Hell, he invented the paleoceanography, literally wrote the
Hmm,
first set of textbooks,
nice.
and he said, just like his buddy Powell did later, he said, "Oh my god, I missed the biggest thing that ever happened in
Oh,
geology, and we
wow.
just missed it." So
I think there's some sites out here at the Channel Islands in Santa Barbara that are like 13,000 years old of
absolutely, and they
people
are
took the,
chock-a-block full with
I guess they
evidence for
call that
that.
the, Kelp Highway, right? Instead of hiking
Mhm.
down California through all the sagebrush and bushwhacking, you just get in a boat and cruise down the coast. Way easier.
Yeah, yeah,
I
that
like the
makes
Kelp
complete
Highway
sense.
idea.
It it
Totally.
it 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 sure does, it sure
And
does.
the fish and the shellfish are good eating.
Mhm.
The problem
But
is, I think, is that those sites, if there's sites, surely there are,
mhm,
they're underwater, 300 feet below or whatever, several hundred feet
right.
underwater. That's you're probably never going to get to it. Underwater archaeology is pretty hard.
Regular archaeology is pretty hard. It's real hard
Yeah.
to work with a
Yeah.
toothbrush down a couple of thousand feet. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let me continue with
Finish
Mark's. I'm
Pablo's
still on
question.
Mark's first question. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then you can have it. I'm not saying he's right
Yeah,
and
go
you're wrong.
ahead.
He just sent me this stuff like 2 hours ago. They claim to have found massive quantities of what they call melt glass at Abu Hurara at the Younger Dryas boundary. They have published a photograph showing more than 150 pieces of it, some as big as 1.4 centimeters across. If this was truly a paradigm overturning discovery, you'd think they would have saved some to donate to a museum to be displayed along with their tektites and meteorites. Notably, many of their analyses, magnetic remnants, for example, were non-destructive, so there's no reason they shouldn't have retained those samples. Unfortunately, they don't have any left, according to Alan West in response to my request for a piece. In this case, my response to Keynes's question, "What do you do, sir?" Change your mind, would be, "I'd like to see proof of the evidence. I'd love to hear George's explanation for why, out of their large collection of more than 150 pieces of supposed Younger Dryas boundary glass from Abu Hurray, there is none left." Go ahead.
Well, first I'll ask him to publish his question. That's what he used to say to people. That's what you used to say to people.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
ad
Yeah. Yeah.
hominem. It
Yeah.
suggests fraud. It doesn't really lay it out. It mixes 3 different time periods and 3 different sites. I don't understand why would you bring up Hopewell, which was not a publication of the Comet Research Group. It
Interesting.
wasn't. It was Ken Tankersley, one single author. Maybe he had another. So what Boslow does is takes anybody that has touched this subject and goes and trashes what they do, and they're all a part of this team, right? And we're saying when actually he's got the cabal. I mean, he's on a hair trigger at all moments to pull stunts like he did with you. It's a fair stunt. I'll take it. And I want to hear the rest of the questions. But he is sitting around in his miserable retirement, picking up that damn check I paid for, doing
Oh, you mean
nothing but
taxpayers?
losing his fucking shit over the fact that he's dead wrong about this. And I talked to Boslow about it in Flagstaff, Arizona at a conference in 2010. And he couldn't credibly even discuss it because he had already come out so firmly against it because what it meant was he was the airburst expert, right? He was, it's pretty narrow field. How many of them are there? And he was the guy. And then so people come along and say that there was, 4,000 to 6,000 airbursts 12,800 years ago. He took the short on that. He said, these guys will get proven wrong, right? There wasn't even was there a paper? Yeah, there was, obviously the paper was already out then. He said, this isn't going to go well for them. I'm going to get on the other side of it. And he has only dug himself in deeper as it has become more and more obvious that
Okay, so you would have
no one
preferred.
is publishing the amount of absolute rock solid laboratory non-speculative forensic evidence that something happened 12,800 years ago, and he looks more and more, everybody that follows his involvement with this knows he's a fool. I mean, they wrote a paper in 2011 called The Younger Dryas Impact, a Requiem. How scientific is that? Is that scientific? Would you put your name on a paper?
Sometimes people just try to be clever with titles.
Yeah,
But what would
it's
how do you,
anti-scientific.
let's say he had sent a letter to the editor at Nature and said,
Yeah.
I would, can we see a piece of one of these boundary glass?
Michael, I don't know what the status of the Abu Hurera samples are. It was crisis archaeology. They're held at a major university, I think Yale. Okay. Whether Alan was saying we can't access it right now, does Alan have some sitting in his drawer? But what he's suggesting there is that it was some kind of phony fraud. And what that would have to involve was the site director, Andrew M.T. Moore.
I'm not sure he's suggesting that. He's just saying, I'd like to see the evidence. Can we see it?
No, he's suggesting fraud. I know that's what he's saying, but what he's doing, he's done it before.
Right.
I've written numerous blogs. He suggested we salted samples and the whole platinum thing. What was basically, there was no escaping what he was saying. The only way you could do it, it's not accidental that we're finding insupportable evidence. Either we got to be faking it. Listen, the pathology here is on his side. The scientific sickness is coming from Boslow. Okay. We're in the literature. We're publishing again and again and again and again on something that is not impossible. There is no psychics here. There's no crazy energy waves. There's no magical
psychic.
Tesla
No,
inventions. No,
no.
there's none of that. We're just saying that there's 1,000 times more fucking platinum at 12.8 than there is immediately after or before.
But
You tell me.
where could, say, an independent lab get some of these samples to test for themselves?
Michael, I have no idea. I'm not evading it, but where could again? It was
Well,
crisis
you said
archaeology. It's
maybe
kept
at
in a
Yale.
major university.
I'm just trying to get at
Right.
maybe it's at maybe Yale archaeologists have some, or
Sure.
geologists.
Yeah. Yeah. You can go back and go to the
But that seems,
American
I
Museum
have
of
to say
Natural
that
History and dig in the
this
bones.
if this is a big deal, it seems like it should be obvious where the actual melted glass pieces are. I mean, isn't that curious that you don't know? You don't have any on your shelf back there behind you or in that little jar?
No, there are a whole bunch from the much more recent paper, right? That
Okay,
was
all
just
right.
published this summer.
But why don't you have from that paper? That sounds pretty significant. Like, that's a huge finding. Okay, can we see it?
Right.
No.
Sure.
Why not?
Yeah. I'll send that to you. Here's a
Not
tektite
that.
from the
No,
Younger
I mean
Dryas
the one that Mark is talking about, the boundary
Yeah,
glass.
generally materials from the location of the world's first discovered archaeology, and that's a Encyclopedia Britannica fact, and it cites Dr. Moore, who published with us in 2020.
Maybe it's in
Okay, that
Syria.
is his discovery. He was listen, man. He's head of the American Society of Archaeologists. We are accused of pseudo archaeology.
But could we
The
ask
whole
him
thing is
more?
such a setup, and the goalpost gets moved. You're moving it on us now. You say publish. Well, you ain't got your pieces and parts. Now he needs to go publish.
Now Moore must know where these pieces are. Have some. He
That's
must have
right.
one.
But I can't channel Dr. Moore now, so I do not know.
Oh, is he dead? Oh, he's gone.
No, I can't channel him because that stuff doesn't exist, right? So I can't tap into his brain right now.
I'm just asking.
Right, I'm getting sandbagged on something. I obviously don't know where the pieces and parts are held.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, that's my answer. I don't know. I said the first thing out of my mouth. I don't know. What's his next question?
Is he still alive? I will get that. But is Moore still alive?
And Andrew is still alive. And
can I email him and just say, hey, I have this.
Sure, you can.
Okay,
I'll email him and copy you. Yeah, I'm happy
that'd be great. That would be
don't
great.
expect me to have a good answer that they're on, lockbox number 12 at the Yale Anthropology Hall. I mean, come on, man.
Okay, question 2.
It's a cheap shot. The guy's a cheap shot artist. He's a piece of shit. What he is.
Okay. All right,
man, you don't know how bad of an actor Boslow's been in this thing.
Okay, all right.
He's anti-scientific as hell. He's ad hominem to the core. His counter evidence, his refutations are thin. He can't do anything but nitpick and cherry pick. And it's anti-science in the extreme. So I'm speaking to him, not you.
Okay.
And I'll have him on this podcast and say the same thing, but he generally runs off squealing when somebody really wants to make him.
I should have the two of you on my podcast.
What's the next question? Yeah, do. It'd be a very popular podcast. This is
all right. Let's do it.
It's a big subject. Yeah.
Okay, I'll ask his other 2 questions. Question number 2, Scott. I'm just reading. Scott Harris is a planetary geologist who is co-author of Firestone et al. 2007, the first paper that the group published on the YD impact hypothesis. Last month, he posted a video in which he returned to the site in Blackville, South Carolina, in which he collected glass for their first paper, Bunch et al. 2012, in which they announced their discovery of what they interpreted as airburst melt glass. Parentheses.
Excuse me, did he say our first paper? That wasn't the first paper at all.
In which he collected glass for their first paper, and then parentheses, Bunch et al. 2012.
Okay, that wasn't anybody's first paper. The first paper is 2007. There were about 5 or 6 between that and Bunch.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
In which they announced their discovery of what they interpreted as airburst melt glass. Parentheses. This was the first paper in which they claimed to have discovered glass in Abu Huraira sediments. Close parentheses. They stated that glass from these 2 sites, Blackville and Abu Huraira, were morphologically indistinguishable from other airburst glass. I just realized I don't have a question there. That's just where it ends.
Scott Harris is such a lunatic that he actually barged into a Randall Carlson lecture, just a nice, friendly lecture at the Fernbank Museum down there in Atlanta. This was about 2 or 3 years ago, and disrupted it to the extent that they had to end the lecture. And Harris chased Carlson into the parking lot If you don't think these guys are ape shit, man, you ain't been following it, which is fine. Who is following it? But I followed every bit of it. And it's as unscientific as it gets. And what happened is when you have a paradigm shifting, you're going to have some squealing. And there's going to be a subset of that squealing that's so bad that it's actually pathological. You know, I mean, they're a little psycho. And I'm telling you, that includes Boslow and Harris. So if they go ad hominem
Okay.
on us all the time, I'm going straight to the man. They're full of shit.
Okay.
Okay.
If you want to ask a third question, I'd be very interested in knowing how George, would explain Malcolm Lecomte's claim to have independently confirmed Alan West's discovery of a peak concentration of magnetic spherules in his 2012 paper, when in fact he was working closely with West and apparently used samples that were prepared by West and or Goodyear for his independent evaluation, quotes around that, of West's claims.
Mhm.
George characterizes Lecomte as being a member of the Comet Research Group, parentheses. It wasn't called that yet in 2010, but he was part of the group that later became the Comet Research Group, close parentheses.
Mhm.
That's the group that George says, quote, went into a refutation of his, Searleville's refutations.
Yeah,
It's
Todd
hard for me-
Searleville, who fucked up
Okay.
his own, test, his own replication of it. I saw him
Oh.
admit
Oh,
in
okay.
in Wyoming at a conference, wherever that town is, but at a conference, hang his head and said, "Oh, I did it wrong. I'll
Oh,
get
no.
back to it." He hadn't gotten
Oh.
back to it, but go ahead.
Oh, wow.
Go
Okay.
ahead. I know this stuff.
Last
Yeah.
sentence here of this paragraph. It's
Yeah,
hard for me to understand how a refutation by the group, as George describes it, could be described as independent of that same group. That was kind of twisted and turning about
Hey,
the West.
listen, that's
West
the
and
kid. See,
Goodyear
he's getting
independent
older and
Lecomte.
weirder and crazier. He's not
Oh.
posing questions that are
Okay.
they ain't even good gotchas. And here's what happens with this stuff, and I've seen it time and time again. Malcolm, anybody that encounters this stuff does not come in as a member of the Comet Research Group or got some, axe to grind that there was a catastrophe 12,000 years ago. It's not helpful to your mainstream reputation, right? Malcolm Lecomte, who is a rocket scientist with a PhD and very skilled in a number of different things, very skilled at operating transmission electron microscopes and EDS machines and all of that, right? Had forensic skills he wanted to employ in his semi-retirement to look over and see whether this crazy claim was true. Then, yes, he verified it, and you're damn right, he stayed with the team. And what happens is, then when somebody call it a team, I mean, it's so unofficial, but God knows there is a name to it, the Comet Research Group, that then when you come out on a paper in conjunction with those same people you might have once gone and tried to verify, then you've drank the Kool-Aid, right? So what he's doing is saying you can't even become associated as a supporter and co-publishing author with this team if you ever want to retain your original stance as unbiased, which is ridiculous. Just like Dr. Moore did. Again, the head of the biggest archaeological association, we're accused of pseudos archaeology all the time. It comes on our team and they say, well, he's a member of the Comet Research Group. Can't take Andrew Moore seriously anymore. What kind of that's bad epistemology. The men were seeking the truth. They found the closest approximation of it they could. It does not help their careers, right? They ain't going for clickbait. Andrew Moore's way past needing any clickbait. He already found the first agriculture. He was just fine in his 80s up there in New Hampshire, right? But he, as an intellectually, someone with integrity, James Kennett, same way, right up there at USC, took a look at it and said, holy shit. Then Powell wrote a book. I mean, James written a book, and also Martin Sweatman. Now he's a member of the Comet Research Group.
Sweatman, right.
Yeah, and
I recognize
Sweatman
that
came
name.
in and broke it all down and did what most of the rest don't do, or in fact, all of them. He read every single paper. And Michael, I'm not trying to pin you down because it's unfair. You get hit with stuff all the time, but I bet you hadn't read any of them, and that's okay. That's like everybody else. But at my website, Cosmic Tusk, we have what I call the bib, where you can see every single paper according to our editorial standards. It's more inclusive than not on this subject. There are over 200 now. and then we categorize them supportive, non-supportive, blah, 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 blah. Right. And it's a hell of a record, man. And you go then read the refuting papers where they put up something like, a requiem for something and throw a bunch of snowballs and get out of hominin and publish literature. And then Dr. Powell had to write a paper about that. He wrote a thing for a science journal, kind of philosophy of science journal, saying it's the most ad hominem thing he'd ever seen in his scientific career. That they come after us. And that's why
help me understand why people are so animated about all this. I mean, it's not exactly like you're writing about gun control or abortion or trans or something that's a political hot button that people are just all agitated about. I mean, this is, kind of a technical geological event thing. Who cares? I mean, why is everybody so?
It never happened because that's why we settled down and became civilized.
Oh, I see. The implications that this is
the implications of it are tremendous.
Of civilization.
It's much more important than the damn thing that happened to the dinosaurs.
I see.
And that's in every textbook worldwide, So, why, to answer your question? Because I think that science swung too far against religion. And it became such that, catastrophes were, campfire talk from Bible people, right? And if you do something that legitimizes campfire talk from Bible people, then that just ain't good. Right. And every culture on earth will tell you, if you sit them down and say, hey, how did it all start for you guys? We'll tell you it was pretty good. And then there was a bad day. Some will talk about the waves. Some will talk. Yeah, well, that's universal. Yeah. And what I find interesting is that the same academics who will pander absolutely endlessly to indigenous cultures, if told what the culture thinks its own history is, tells them back, oh, it's a campfire story. That's brown people sitting around a campfire. No, there was a catastrophe 13,000 years ago. And we've all remembered it in our own ways. That's why you can go ask again, name them. They're 250. I think, what's his name went and cataloged it all. And they all say there was a catastrophe, but it sounds like Bible talk.
I'm just checking something here on my chapter on Graham Hancock.
And hey, I don't mean to get too heated with you. I find that kind of stuff fun. And I know you're a good sport too. So we're both, I hope we're disagreeing agreeably. Perhaps we've crossed that line, but I'm not.
I don't have any dog in this fight at all. It doesn't matter to me what it all means.
Well, it should. This is a big question and you're an arbitrator.
Well, okay. So, I mean, if you want to get into, what gave rise to civilization, I mean, there's, a lot of archaeologists have written quite a bit about this, including like my friend Jared Diamond, who writes about the, what triggered it all. Well, it's probably populations finally started to get too big for the carrying capacity of a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. So you sort of get this trial and error. How are we going to feed this many people? And then, eventually you get agriculture, and it's a very, takes thousands of years, mostly just chance and experiments and random accidents that, that the wheat kernels fall off easier than they did, by a single point mutation that could have triggered it. And that led to agriculture, and that led to more population. Populations get bigger and bigger. They have division of labor. Then you got to have, habitats and technology and a hierarchical political system. And, so, I mean, this has all been worked out by archaeologists and historians of ancient history in a gradual way. There's no massive starting point. Like over thousands of years, this kind of unfolds. And it's not clear to me what your mechanism of what it would trigger the birth of civilization, an impact wipes out.
I found that the most mysterious thing about it. I have no idea. And I'm very much on record saying that's the kind of next step where you go and say, okay, why would that happen? But you've got to accept the fact that there's a catastrophe first. And it is a well-established fact. Hold on, I want to remember everything just so I can fully address your question.
Yeah.
It strains my credulity to believe that the emergence of agriculture would happen to coincide with a catastrophe. Unless you're saying the catastrophe didn't happen. Why would there be 1,000 times more platinum right before you see that first acorn wheat?
Okay, George, let's just say it happened. Okay. All right.
Okay.
What? Okay. So, but I mean, some significant percentage of however many people were living on Earth at the time are wiped out, but not everybody.
Yeah.
All right. So are you arguing maybe that that there was like a founder population of people that for whatever reason they survived, had some new ideas, and that then explodes into the the fossil record and so on of this
Well, it's totally speculative. I'm just saying the two things coincide. Whether how the causation occurred, right? I don't think it's coincidence. Okay, so how the causation, the mechanism of why it doesn't seem intuitive to me. First of all, your game would drop off. But would you think all the way through that, okay, we better start pinning animals instead of hunting them, and we better start growing crops instead of, going out and gathering them? That does seem to be quite
But
a leap
I
to
know you
have
don't completely
right
endorse.
after a catastrophe. Yeah.
I know you don't completely endorse Graham's idea, but his idea was that the knowledge was always there, and these ancient wise people, the Atlanteans, if you want to call them something, and that they then brought that back to the survivors after the big impact event.
That's right. No, I can speak to it. And well, what I've asked Graham before, I was like, well, why the hell did it take another 6,000 years to emerge in Egypt?
Yeah.
Why didn't they go build the pyramid 11,000 years ago?
Yeah,
but there are a lot of people that believe they did, but then again, that's kind of moving the bar. I mean, that's in the realm of speculation, and that's fun stuff. I host a conference on it. I do believe now, just an accumulation of ideas and circumstantial evidence that, yeah, there was something, particularly this is unanswerable right now. All right. And yeah, I believe there were some people with some skills that may have been translated to someone else subsequently. I don't understand why there'd be such a gap. Göbekli Tepe makes a little bit more sense because it's contemporaneous, more or less, with the catastrophe.
Back in the 1980s, there was much debate about the role of impacts in geological events and human civilization and so on. And most scientists were skeptical of that. Steve Gould used to talk about this all the time in his essays, that they had bought into so fully the principle of uniformitarianism as first laid out by what's his name in Darwin's colleague, Charles Lyell. And that that's true most of the time, but that impacts do occasionally happen. They're one-off events. Gould calls them contingent events, and that they have big consequences, like the demise of the dinosaurs. That was big. We probably wouldn't even be here, right? Because we were just tiny little mammals living in the nooks and crannies of ecosystems, and the dinosaurs dominated. Now they're wiped out, so we can emerge mammals. And then primates. Okay, so but Gould's point was that then began to change, particularly, for example, with Shoemaker. Shoemaker-Levy comet that hit Jupiter. I forget his first name now, Shoemaker, but he had long pushed the catastrophic theory, catastrophes in geology, like the meteor crater in Arizona.
That's right.
Looks like the crater on the moon. And it's astonishing to me that it took that long to figure out that the craters on the moon are impact craters, not volcanoes, right?
Jim Powell wrote a book on it. The same guy who wrote the book In Our Defense wrote a book on that exact subject.
Nice. Yeah.
It gets back to catastrophism. I'm sorry. It is biblically influenced. It's something about it that scratches that bug that says, this helps the other team out.
But this is my point, George.
Yeah.
Is that by the 2000s, 2010s or so, it was as Gould said, in the 90s. Now we know that catastrophes happen all the time. It's accepted. The Alvarez hypothesis about the impact down in the Yucatan Peninsula was largely accepted. And geologists came around. They made the paradigm shift. Catastrophes happen, and they're impactful, and they're important, and we accept that as real. By the 1990s, Gould said that. And so by the time you guys are writing in the 2010s, it's not you're not radical heretics. You're not crazy people. You're not fringe anymore. Catastrophe
sure do feel like it.
Catastrophic geology is not fringe anymore. This is the point that Gould was making. I'm making.
Go back and look at the mainstream acceptance. At the blog that I sent you last night, the very top one, Alexander Witze, who writes for Nature, I believe, it says, no, this didn't happen. They still do. You don't have any. Where's the news story? One person went and looked at it. A guy went and wrote a front page, took a good look at it, wrote what was it? 12,000 word piece. I don't know. Huge piece in the New York Times magazine that I'll send you that went through the whole debate. And anybody that goes and really looks at it is like, this is an example of some people getting fucked. I mean,
Well, I don't know.
you
Again,
admit
I don't.
that happens, that there are paradigm changes, and there is a period of fucking. But back to your question in the context, there is something far more provocative to science that humans could have experienced a cosmic catastrophe on a global scale than dinosaurs did. And dinosaurs was pretty provocative. It took them 14 years from 80 to roughly 94 till they found the crater. Right. So that's pretty good fight, particularly when your dad's a Nobel Prize winner. I mean, these are mainstream guys using the exact
I
same
know.
proxies we use. Right.
Yes, it's true.
So,
It did take they were slow to come around, but now everybody accepts that. So it
well,
does
people went
happen.
back and replicated. There hasn't been a National Science Foundation grant to us. Not one. There hasn't been one dime of federal money. A couple of billion a year being spat out about all sorts of narrow band little bullshit in science. But you go take this question and no one will go dig shallow soils from the US government, or at least with their funding.
Well, is there anybody I mean, I think you've said
Yeah.
there are mainstream geologists on your team. They work at universities and so on. Why can't they apply for grants? I mean, that's what everybody does.
They don't get them.
Oh, they don't get
We
them.
did that early on. No.
I
In the
see.
getting into the journals, years of waiting with you can't say this, can't say that, blah, blah. I mean, just
Okay, I
torturous.
believe that. I believe that's
Yeah.
possible. I mean, there is, bias in that.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's being pushed back. It is the example what I would hope that you can get to, because you're getting hit blind with a lot of that stuff, and if it can become a part of your book, literally or figuratively, this is an example of one that was right. Like this time they were right, and it was actually tied up with Graham Hancock and shit. So everybody doesn't want it to be
Listen,
right.
George, I know this happens. It happens. Look what I was just talking earlier about Jay Bhattacharya and his great Barrington Declaration in the fall of 2020. Say we need to reopen the schools. We need to reopen businesses, and only old people and obese people and people with preconditions are being largely affected by the virus. And he was laughed out as a fringe epidemiologist, they called him. Anthony Fauci and Francis Collins and that whole group. Jay Bhattacharya is a professor at Stanford. He's got 2 PhDs, one in epidemiology and one in economics. I mean, how can you call this guy? Okay, now he's head of the whatever his department is there, the Trump administration. He's he's an insider. So the change does happen. I mean, but to your point,
it does. And I've watched this.
But he's been proven right. And he did that by talking to other scientists, going, no, look here. So it's doable. Just keep going.
Oh yeah. I'm just saying it's an example. It is the principal example globally of human understanding being hobbled by sociological pathologies.
Yes, that's true in all fields. I mean,
this is the bad one though. Something's got to be top, and I'd like it, and listen, I don't mean to poor pity me, but because what happened, Michael, and I watched it from the beginning, it couldn't get mainstream publications. Nobody pay any attention to it in the science magazines in the early 2000s and whatnot, but then came along podcasts. And Joe Rogan mentions a Younger Dryas event every third show.
Oh, I know.
Right.
I know. So, I mean, you have the biggest voice
you got
in the world on your side.
Basis that science should lead and tell people there's something here, rather than people having to go outside of what traditionally were the channels to verify things. And then because they're going to pick up false stuff too. Maybe the precursor civilization is wrong, but they're so disappointed that,
but I would disagree that with your assessment that it's because of biblical implications of the impact and that science is anti-biblical. I think we're long past that. Again, I think, as Gould pointed out, and it's gotten even better since his death, that the role of impact geology is largely accepted now. There's no biblical implications. Nobody.
But there is an impact geologist in the world, mainstream guy, use that damn term. Outside of the Comet Research Group, they're in an impact geologist that would tell you that an impact has ever killed a human.
Okay.
That's a big difference. That's a big jump for them. They have taken, it's like astrobiology. It's one very self-defeating discipline, right? And they built their careers on things being millions of years ago and culturally irrelevant. And then you bring their science, impact geology, and all of a sudden try to say, hey, not only is it culturally relevant, it's culturally foundational, and they go, no way. I just spent my whole career saying they all take millions of years. Because again, context matters, timing matters.
But again, I like with
there were
Gobekli
catastrophes, and accepting there were catastrophes of the scale we're talking about in human times are two different things.
But the resistance of archaeologists to go as far back as Graham wanted to go, and then Gobekli Tepe comes along and challenges that, and now everybody accepts its age and that it's a real anomaly.
Yeah.
Okay, so apparently archaeologists can be convinced, hey, that thing is real. It really is that old. We need to restructure our theories about how hunter-gatherers are able to build something like that. Yeah. That seems like they listened. They changed their mind when the evidence changed. No?
Well, the evidence didn't change. They just found evidence. I mean,
well, the German guy Schmidt that discovered Gobekli.
Yeah, that's right. And
I mean, he wasn't considered.
I don't think you could have ignored it.
He wasn't a fringe nut, though. I mean, he was unfortunately died young, but
we can't find it's. I don't want to say it's more subjective, but damn it, it is. I mean, if you find a temple and date it, that's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, and now everybody accepts it. So again, maybe it happens a little slower than you'd like, but it happens.
Yeah.
Right. And so now everybody accepts Gobekli Tepe. Yep, it's that old. Yep, it's that advanced. All right, we need to rethink how ancient peoples did things. Okay, what's wrong with that? That seems good.
Well, that happened almost instantaneously. No one denied it existed. When we've been through 18 years of people saying things like, suggesting that you're hiding samples or making up.
Okay, I don't know, George. I'm sorry. I guess at this point, I would just have you and, although maybe you and Mark, it would be I have a feeling you have some history there. Is there, who else is in this space that is, you feel
no,
more neutral or listen? Okay.
If you will.
He's the guy. Okay.
Yeah,
right,
and
I'm the two of you
if you want to do it, and I won't let it get too heated, but I've just seen enough ad hominem. I'm going to send you a paper that was written specifically on how bad they have treated this thing, and I mean it's right up your alley, this paper. And
well, send me what you want to send me, not too much.
Yeah, and I don't mean to play link,
but send me a couple of things
live.
But like George, I mean, I don't care that you're a pajama. What did you call yourself? Pajama
scientist.
Pajama scientist. Yeah, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me what your credentials are. I just want to, what are your arguments? What's the evidence? That's all I care about. Mark, whatever, he can say whatever he wants. I no bitchy remarks. Just get to the evidence. What do we think? I mean, if we surveyed, I don't even know if this is been nice, but if you surveyed 1,000 geologists and said, what is your stance on the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis? What would they say? I mean, has anybody done this?
Is it an anonymous survey?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It'd have to be anonymous. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I'll give you an example of this. David Chalmers, the philosopher, coined the expression "the hard problem of consciousness." Okay.
Yeah.
So he and one of his grad students conducted a survey of like 3,600 professional philosophers and their graduate students.
Right.
And then they had like 27 different controversies. What is your opinion? And then they have they have like the little bar chart, free will and determinism, compatibilism. Here's where professional philosophers fall on that issue, or, what the correspondence theory of truth and so on. Somebody should do that for geologists, just the big questions, the impact hypothesis of the dinosaurs, the impact hypothesis of the Younger Dryas. That would be two. There's probably a dozen other interesting problems I'm not even aware of that they could. I would be curious to know what, 1,000 out of 1,000 geologists, what percentage think you guys are right?
No, it would be interesting. But I tell you, there's something fundamentally different about what, for instance, happened between us and the dinosaur thing. I remember following every bit of that. It was available to you.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That there was an accessible debate within the mainstream about this. What happened to our thing is it became a group of heretics that anyone that touches it is now one, and that they are untouchable. That's a different.
Yeah, that's not good.
Believe me, the quality of this thing, having experienced it firsthand, has been kind of brutal. Let me give you an example. I talked about that honeymoon period. So we published thing in 2007, made worldwide news, not a household name, but it got out there. And National Geographic thing. And then they did a PBS Nova, right? Which is the Cadillac of TV shows, and particularly back then. So it's 2009.
Yeah.
They come fly people all over the world, recreate finding the nano diamonds in Greenland, et cetera, and so forth. Beautiful cinematic show. And we, particularly just being involved with this as a civilian, I was like, hell yeah, man, this major discovery, it's getting attention. And here come the textbook, rewritings.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they took it down. It's not available anymore, that television show.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, because Mark Boslow petitioned WGBH privately and anonymously,
come on.
just like he does on all our things.
He can't have.
No.
He can't have that much influence.
We'll have him answer. We'll have him see if he sort of,
Well, maybe he did. I'm not saying he didn't write,
but it's not available. They burned our book, Michael.
I mean, how could he have that much influence over a PBS? Come on.
No. You can sit there and cut WGBH and say, hey, I'm the airburst expert, et cetera, and so forth. Here are my credentials. Here's my other little team of people. I got a nano diamond expert. Here are a couple of papers we wrote. This is all bullshit, and you need to get rid of that TV show.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Right. So
I guess that's possible. Yeah. I mean, that has happened. Yeah. After the Velikovsky event happened, he became super famous. A group of astronomers wrote to his publisher that they weren't going to use their textbooks because they published his book.
That's right.
And then I think Sagan and Asimov were against that. They thought that's going too far.
Sagan didn't do much for Velikovsky, though. I think
they debated.
Yeah.
But no, to Carl's credit, he publicly debated him rather than just dismiss him as a crank. He said, all right, here are the claims. He has a whole chapter in his book, Broke His Brain. Long. That's right. It's like 50 pages long or whatever. Here are all of Velikovsky's claims. Here's why I think they're wrong. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, that's right. And Velikovsky did tremendous damage to catastrophism in human times. Because he was, so Fruit Loopy about his cosmology,
yes,
right? That he was easy pickings for Sagan.
Yeah.
But did he identify correctly that 13,000 years ago there was a tremendous catastrophe? Yes, he did. And he joined a long line of them back to Plato.
Interesting.
I mean, this is a common thread of it, but it's always been pushed away since about the 1880s, right? Because we have Darwin now. We have uniformitarianism. And those are all encompassing. Uniformitarianism, it became less an approach or a tool than it just became an ideology. It's one of the first damn thing you learn in geology class is that everything occurs by processes that are identifiable today after acting over a long period. When that is the starting point of the discipline, and someone comes in and says, I don't know, I think that that the Finger Lakes were dug out in a long weekend because it looks like water was pushing from under a glacier. Everybody gets, no. There's some rivers in there, I think, Harlan Bretz, discovered the northwestern, the Colombian floods up there. Right. It was absolutely theoretical. They finally gave him the Peabody Award for geology in his 90s. And he said, I just wish some of the other guys were still alive. That gave him hell for 20 or 30 years, saying that this was caused by a massive flood, that most of the landscape, 2 or 3 states, was caused by a massive flood. And he took shit all through the early 20th century, and only later did they get around to it, which does get to your point. But I think we got to keep an eye out for these things. It's like, I think they shouldn't give PhDs unless you hold one heretical position in your discipline.
You have to be able to say, I could be wrong.
It's just one thing where you got to walk the plank just a little bit and say, I'll pick that plank. Because at any given time, if we know anything about the history of discovery and science, et cetera, it's that we're massively wrong about some things at any given point in time. Right.
And that's that's the message of my book. Truth. We're massively wrong. Fallibilism. George, I got to go pick up my kid from school, so I got to run.
Hey, that's a great excuse. Thank you for your patience with me. I hope
let's have you and Mark on the show, on my show.
I'd love to do it. I'd love to do it. I hope he does
Okay.
too. And
We'll keep
I'll
it
keep it
civil.
cool. Okay. I
Keep it
will try
cool.
not to get ad hominem, or
Okay.
I'll come with receipts. Okay.
Oh, everybody's gotta have receipts. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I got them, buddy. I'd love to
Okay.
come on in, but thank you for coming
Okay.
on this show.
You're
Okay.
welcome. All right.
Yeah, you're a gentleman and
Thanks,
a
George.
scholar and valuable
There's
person to our culture. Thank you.